Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Kevin Milligan. Kevin, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate you coming on. And can you tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Milligan's Maple?
Yeah, thanks for having me on today, Matt. Really appreciate it. So I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I am the president and co-founder of Milligan's Maple Syrup. I started out as a side business back in 2015. Went to school and got my undergrad in accounting. Knew at some point I was going to have to pivot and do something else because I really didn't like it. But at the time, I graduated college in 2010, and accounting was really the only field that was getting jobs and getting hired. So I wanted to hit the reset button a lot quicker than I originally thought. I was just very unhappy, and I have pretty bad ADHD, so attention to detail and focusing on numbers and that sort of thing. It wasn't a great match. Like, I did the CPA and all that, I just applying it and then just trying to be motivated and passionate about auditing someone's financials just really wasn't for me. And mom's know best. She was tired of hearing me complain about my career in public accounting, and she suggested I start a maple syrup business down at our family farm in Athens, Ohio, which is southeast Ohio. When I say farm, it's just a really large forest for one of the largest certified family sustainable forests in Ohio. I didn't really know much about real maple syrup at the time, and I started researching it. This is pretty interesting and cool. It was a lot of hard work.
Your parents' farm was really like one of the largest family sustainable forests. Take me back to kind of that time and your interest in getting really more involved with that side of things.
Yeah, so I started researching how it's made. I visited some small and medium-sized operations and thought, hey, this is something I'd like to give a try. My first year, I tapped 400 trees and made about 85 gallons. It was a very steep learning curve. Every year you learn something new during the production season, but yeah, that first year was just totally learning on the fly and plenty of hiccups, but I really learned to embrace it and love it, and just being able to plan where the company's direction is going and how I want to sell and the strategy and all that. I really enjoyed having a holistic view rather than just being siloed in accounting where I was not excelling or enjoying it. So
yeah, no, I could definitely see that. And I think most people, when they think about maple syrup, they just know, if you go over to state lines in Vermont or somewhere in the Northeast, usually just go to the little gift shop, and that's where you usually find it. I don't think people really know too much about the process, seemingly. So what was kind of those? This is some of the biggest things you took away that you didn't really realize went into actually tapping trees and processing it to turn it into consumer ready product.
Well, I had no idea that it took 40 to 50 gallons of sap from a maple tree to get a gallon of maple syrup. Learning about how critical the weather is, whether it's a degree or two plus or minus, it could really make a big impact. And yeah, just all the unique steps like filtering the finished syrup and bottling, learning about food safety. It was a lot.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think most people in the CPG space, no matter what it is, what kind of food or drink it is, I think the roadmap and the learning curve for these types of brands, especially if you don't have a real background in it, kind of seems to be a familiar story, no matter what it is, whether it's tea or whether it's beef or anything of any founders that have come on the podcast. So I think that's a very common experience of anybody getting started with a product like this. And then I know you mentioned, kind of strategizing about where you want to sell these things. What's the best channels for that? So where did you kind of start with that? And has anything changed as you kind of progressed here to 2024 in the ways you're selling, whether it's direct to consumer or, selling with retailers or working with distributors or anything like that?
I started originally trying to sell retail and quickly learned that you are definitely held hostage by the retailer, where they put your product on their shelf, what they're selling it for. I think I sold a dozen bottles to a place pretty close to my farm, sold it for $10 a bottle. I was expecting them to sell it for 15, something like that. And I go in a month later and I see that it's for sale for $28. And of course, nobody bought a bottle for $28. That's
right.
Just wasn't realistic. And I had a friend, and he put me in touch with the owner, and we had a meeting, and I was able to sell my entire first year's harvest just through that one restaurant. And I started to think about it okay, retail, people taking a bottle home, and you never know how quickly they're going to go through it. And then it's just not reliable, steady demand. And then also the volume, I was having 16 8-ounce bottles to a gallon of syrup, and drop in 40 gallons at a time. So just the sheer volume was definitely not in the retail space for me. There are some companies that do a great job with the retail side of it and generally partner with distributors, and like they'll have automatic online lines, that sort of thing. And, they could realize those economies of scale and make money with a very small margin. But I decided to go the restaurant space. I was distributing myself for, until was the catalyst for having me partner with a distributor, but I would do in-person deliveries in Ohio, and then I would ship via FedEx had some customers in like Louisville, Chicago. And then as I grew, I decided that something that was a little more really trips, and I actually got hooked up with a distributor, Shamrock Foods out west. I was sending samples for COVID because I was going from selling like 400 gallons a week to I think I sold 2 gallons the entire month of April. And I started to just do a lot of research on, okay, where are some, heavily populated areas that might not on paper seem super appealing. Like obviously there's New York, Chicago, LA, but I landed on Phoenix, Arizona, being like the 5th most populous city in the country, in Arizona, just being a booming state with growth and a strong economy. And so I started sending out samples to top restaurants in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. And my good friend, Ivan O'Farrell, the owner of Fame Cafe, he decided to bring me on as their supplier in Ohio to Arizona, but he set me up with Shamrock Foods and got in there as a vendor and went out. I started shipping 1 pallet at a time, and now, which is 144 gallons, now I'm doing full truckloads every other month, which is about 3,500 gallons. So things really took off and skyrocketed.
Cool. So basically, I heard you saying right before you dropped, basically that you got into Phoenix, kind of working with an initial kind of restaurant partner there that was buying, pallets from you, and now basically doing truckloads out there. So not for the same restaurant, I assume. You're working with, multiple, restaurants and clients out there now. Is that kind of where you're at? And are you still pretty much only doing Phoenix?
Yeah. So the restaurant account that I acquired put me in touch with the distributor that they work with, Shamrock Food. They're a really large distributor that's regional. They're in Colorado, Arizona, California, New Mexico, Idaho, Wyoming, and they brought me on as a vendor, and they invited me to come visit accounts and try to convert them from, they were using, most of the accounts I was visiting was using a Vermont syrup, and went and met with a bunch of chefs and restaurant owners and GMs and got a lot of great feedback with my syrup, and they love my story. And next thing I know, I'm going from like an 800 gallon per year volume to about 17 to 18,000 gallons a year with Shamrock. So
that's awesome. So I guess when you go into those conversations of obviously, people probably they're looking for maple syrup, probably already have it, maybe looking for something a little bit different. How do you kind of, tell your story of differentiating between like the typical, Vermont syrups, or I know even New York State, where I am, is I know very well known for their syrup from upstate as well. How do you kind of have those conversations and differentiate yourself from like a, really large market of these types of syrups from different regions of the country?
Yeah. So with Ohio, doesn't have the greatest brand recognition for maple syrup. Everybody knows Vermont and New Hampshire. There's something about the nutrients that are in the soil where Ohio maple syrup, and then you also mentioned New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they always win awards at the international trade conferences for maple syrup. Vermont does a great job making a lot. I actually make maple syrup. A lot of these really large companies that work with distributing companies just bottle it they'll go for like Joe Smith down the road in Vermont, or anyone and everyone, as long as it has the correct sugar content, they'll take it, and then they'll just kind of blend it all together. Actually making maple syrup, if I do supplement my supply, I have several farms that I'll partner with and different producers that I will go and inspect their operation, sample everything, obviously make sure it's a good fit for the both of us, and go from there. But, actually making maple syrup, I have the knowledge of what it should taste like, and whether somebody has cut the corners and is just looking for profit and volume rather than producing a high quality artisan product. So, and then I also have several scholarships, different culinary programs that help give back to the culinary community that supports me. Do them in the form of cooking competitions where students will develop recipes using syrup that we donate to the culinary program's test kitchen, and we bring in area chefs and other restaurant industry professionals to judge the different dishes, and then I give out cash prizes to the students. And when places hear that you're supporting their industry and giving back and not just looking at it as being transactional, that really helped make a difference. And then also I have branded apparel. I pass out these hats, t-shirts. So yeah, and then just being accessible. Like if I meet with a customer, even if it is through a distributor, I'm like, hey, if you ever have any issues or any questions or anything I could do to help out, just let me know. And it's kind of that personal touch, and then do at the same time need to realize that these restaurants have 120 plus ingredients most of the time, and I am just a very small cog in the wheel. So not pushing too hard, but then also not just being on my heels and not trying to make sales and build off of relationships and give recipe suggestions and promotional items and help give back. Like I'll also buy tickets for I'll ask the chef or the restaurant owner, like, hey, what sports team do your staff, or do you like attending games, and who does your staff enjoy? And I'll buy a ticket that team and in that select market. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. I was going to ask you about the scholarship only because I saw it on the website naturally. So, but yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, no matter what industry you're in or what type of product you have, to just really start with that kind of local community and the community of people that you're working with on a daily basis. So it's not just transactional. I think that is really important. So I think it's a really important perspective. So I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I know I mentioned right before we got started, Kevin, thank the question I always love to ask on the podcast, which is basically just, if you could go back to, when you first kind of, got out of accounting, went down to the farm, did your first season there, before you kind of went to market and had been kind of forged these relationships. If you could give yourself any one piece of advice, if you were to start this brand again, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Kind of going to be two prongs. I still had a full-time day job when I first started the maple syrup business. And then I decided to take a part-time accounting job to help cover the bills, because I wasn't profitable until year 4 of my business and needed to pay the mortgage and the bills somehow. But I would say just I then went full-time at it in 2019, and that's when things really took off. And I wish I would have trusted myself and believed in myself more. And I was kind of scared to take a huge leap of faith and trusting and counting on myself, betting on myself to be able to make it work and provide a living for me and my family. So I'd say going it all in earlier, and also working on the business rather than not working in the business, where like I don't need to be putting on for retail bottles and different things like that. And just getting my start, like, okay, my 10-year-old niece can put on these labels to bottles. Like my time's more valuable. So yeah, working on the business and trusting myself and believing in myself to go at it full time sooner is what I would tell myself back in 2015.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. And you're probably not surprised to hear it's actually a pretty common answer that I get to that question, which is one, just like go all in earlier on it, but also, be a little bit more willing and trusting to outsource the kind of things that could take up all your time that don't really lead to like growing the business, just running the business. Those are across industries. I will say, whether somebody's pre-revenue or has been in business for 20 years, it's a very common answer I get to that question. So I think it's good advice. We hear something 30 times on a podcast with kind of very diverse, group of people that come on, that evidence that it's good advice is not really anecdotal anymore. So I appreciate you being part of that kind of conversation and advice for, I think a lot of people listen to our podcast. They are kind of early on in their journey in their own CPG brand. So I think that's really valuable. I appreciate you sharing that. And, Kevin, I just want to give you an opportunity quickly as well. Just, shout out your website, any like socials anybody should know about. If anybody's interested in reaching out to you for maybe a potential business partnership or just wants to try the product, what's the best way to stay in touch with you all?
Yeah, you can check out our website, MILLIGAN'smaple.com. We have an online shop there where you can order our grade A maple syrup, our bourbon barrel aged maple syrup, both of which have appeared on the Food Network several times. And one of the few positives of 2020, Good Morning America had my bourbon barrel aged syrup on it for about 2 seconds. So always try to hold on to that 2 seconds of fame for as long as I can. Then yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm pretty much always on the clock. It's very hard for me to turn off, except for when I'm on the golf course and I don't bring my phone. Yeah, any chefs or restaurant owners or anyone that's interested in trying our products, and whether it just be for your fridge at home or for your walk-in cooler at your large restaurant, I would love, if you're going to use real maple syrup, I would love for it to be ours.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, man. I love what you're doing. I just want to wish you the best of luck and continued success in everything you're doing. And yeah, really looking forward to staying in touch as well. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, everybody.